Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'm pleased to welcome you to this month's Meet the Expert. I'm joined today by Steve Jones, who is one of our lead consultant at Legerity. Hi, Steve. How are you
Good
doing
morning,
today?
Nicholas. Very good, thank you.
Great, great. So today we'll discuss with Steve FINREP and COREP alignment. As a reminder for everyone, you can ask all your questions in the comment section on LinkedIn or drop us an email at info@legerityfinancials.com. You will see the email address showing up at the bottom from time to time. Here you go. And if we can't answer your question during the session, we'll make sure to come back to you after the event via email or any other mean that you prefer. So let's get right into it. The first question I wanted to ask you actually, Steve, it's just to put a little bit of the context. What do you think is the biggest challenge that financial institutions are presented with as a result of having to meet FINREP and COREP reporting requirements?
Yeah, it's a kind of key question for people, obviously. So our understanding from speaking to various financial institutions over the last kind of weeks and months, it appears that a single consistent source of the data that can be used as the basis for preparing both sets of returns is one of the key requirements that people have. There's a very broad coverage of reporting requirements across the two reporting frameworks. So financial reporting, FINREP, common reporting, COREP. Under FINREP alone, the scope has expanded, sort of both in terms of the number of templates required for submission and the level of detail required. So for FINREP, for example, we're talking about 53 or so new forms and templates with over sort of 6,500 different data fields required. For FINREP, that obviously covers reporting of financial information, so a detailed balance sheet, asset, liability, and equity breakdowns, including a sort of product and a counterparty split within those dimensions, and also a profit and loss breakdown. Whereas for COREP, then the requirements relate to obviously credit risk, market risk, own funds analysis, capital adequacy ratios, and liquidity coverage. So, but the real challenge is that for those different reporting data sets, they all need to be consistent with each other, and they therefore need to be based on the same underlying data source.
Okay, and that's actually a very nice way to move to the next question on what is required to help organization meet these requirements.
Yeah, interesting. What we believe from kind of a Legerity perspective is that an integrated accounting rules engine, a sub-ledger, and a banking data repository is fundamental to being able to meet those requirements. We would also recommend that within that sort of sub-ledger component, that the balances are held at an extremely granular level, which allows those underlying balances then to be rolled up or aggregated across the different bases and structures that are necessary for supporting the different reporting frameworks.
Okay. Could you tell us more about the granular nature of the balance and that would be required to meet the FINREP and COREP requirements?
Yeah, so there are the obvious sort of mandatory dimensions you'd expect to have. So obviously a detailed chart of accounts that's required to support the balance sheet and the P&L requirements within FINREP. But you also then need further dimensions within your data set. So to be able to support the product analysis that's required, and fundamentally as well the counterparty analysis. And also within the reporting, there is an individual and a consolidated basis for returns. So there needs to be an entity dimension that's incorporated into those data sets as well. Speaking about it from a FastPost perspective, in addition to having mandatory dimensions to cater for the chart of accounts and the entity, the FastPost application also has 20 further configurable dimensions or segments, as we refer to them, that can be used for storing attributes such as the product or the counterparty or an instrument. And those 20 dimensions can be used in whatever means is appropriate. I think it's also worth pointing out, though, that and a number of kind of prospective clients mention this to us, that sometimes they don't feel that those 20 dimensions are sufficient. So it's also important to be able to recognize that those dimensions can be further enriched or enhanced with attributes that relate to the reference data. So they're not held against the balances directly, but through the integration of the associated reference data, those balances can be enhanced. So again, for example, counterparties as a very good example, where you have NACE classifications that were required within the reporting. Those attributes can be associated with the counterparty, likewise country of location, country of risk. So it's very important to have a sort of a flexible and an integrated data model to support the requirements.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely a key point. All of that is at the end linked to the data model. So how do you ensure, therefore, the integrity of the data across the accounting, the contract level data held within the banking data model that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so the way that we approach that with Legerity FastPost is within our banking data repository, we can obviously, as you would expect, hold trade or contract level details. And we would expect a feed of that data from whichever upstream trade capture system or trade booking system the client has. In addition to that sort of trade level detail, we also then expect life cycle events to be sent to us from which the accounting is generated. And each of those life cycle events, which are obviously relevant to each of the different products that we're catering for, each of those life cycle events carries on it the contract ID or the trade ID. But within FastPost, we perform extensive upfront validation, which ensures that we don't create accounting entries for any trades or contracts for which we don't already have the associated trade details. What that means is that we don't then end up generating orphaned, as I refer to, orphaned accounting entries for which we don't have the associated contract details. Lots of organizations, when they come to kind of starting to prepare their reports and their returns, they can find that they identify these data quality issues only at that stage, which is very late in the process and in the reporting life cycle to then be able to kind of rectify those issues. So our approach is we identify any of those issues, those data validation issues up front, where they can be identified. So, we would provide notifications and manage the data on an exception basis, meaning that those validation issues can be addressed and rectified well in time to meet the reporting timelines.
Yeah, no, and the consistency of the data, this is key for any sort of reporting or audit, and we will probably touch on it in a second. But I have a question here where I ask, several organizations will already have some reporting solution that can cater for FINREP and COREP reporting requirement. So how does actually a solution like FastPost integrate with those applications?
Yeah, a very important point, that, because from a Legerity perspective, we don't attempt to fill the reporting space itself. We very much regard ourselves as the data providers for whichever end reporting tool the client has chosen to utilize. Having the data, as we've mentioned already, in a consistent and integrated manner is essential for feeding into whatever reporting application the client may have chosen to use. And the way we can facilitate that is that as part of the sort of standard offering within FastPost, it's based on a very open architecture. So essentially all of the data model that we have within the application is exposed to the client. We can do that through either a set of generic
Okay, Steve, I think there is a small problem with the audio. Can we could not hear the end of what you were saying. Yeah, can you speak now? Yeah, we can hear you again.
Sorry, Nicholas, I'm not hearing you, I'm afraid.
No, you're back. It's all right. will get through. So Steve, you're back. Perfect. Thank you very much for all those insights like that. That's very good. And it's actually quite interesting how you go through the big detailed requirement that are coming out of FINREP and COREP, how this actually is all about accessing the data and viewing the data in those right dimensions, as you mentioned. But it's not only about that. It's about structuring all this data and then integrating with the reporting tools that can put those stories into a way that you can share with the auditors and so on. So maybe regarding that, when you speak about reporting, there's now more and more financial and non-financial data. So I'm not sure if Steve is still there, but we might have lost it. So let me address the financial and non-financial data. So this is true. It's a big challenge for organization nowadays, that there is much more requirements. It's no longer just your accounting data. If we think about something as simple as not simple, but as straightforward as the ESG. Now you can bring some carbon footprint as a non-financial data into an accounting type of view. You can also integrate with other source of information. So there's a questions of the financial and the non-financial data that can be considered from a subledger and an accounting rules type of aspect that can bring brought into Legerity FastPost. But at the same time, for the reporting solution, they always have this integration to put a text light and then integrating with FastPost to combine those two different data sources. So that's a very important consideration. Steve, I see that you're back.
Apologies.
I just addressed the question on the financial and non-financial data. So maybe I just want to go with one more question. So we'll see how this one goes. Can you tell us a little bit more? We spoke about the control, the audit, the importance of data. So can you tell us a little bit more about the audit and control requirements related to reported values?
Sure. So, in addition to the data validation that we mentioned a moment ago, where we would ensure that all of the data by its nature, once it's accepted into FastPost, is integrated and validated. So we never have, orphaned entries or inconsistent data within the application. I think what's also key for end users is that when they're reporting what are summarized values, that it's possible to get a breakdown of those values and to see the full audit trail that is associated with them. FastPost is capable of supporting that requirement. So as well as being able to, report the rolled up or aggregated balance, it's possible for a user within the application to, do a drill down. So they can look at the individual balances, the detailed balances that support that summarized value that's appearing in the report. But then further, for those detailed balances themselves, and if it's necessary, you can drill down further to the actual underlying journal lines that supported those balances, that constitute the balance. And at the lowest level for each individual journal posting, the user can actually drill back and see the individual business event, the accounting event that was the source itself for those journals having been generated. So there is a full sort of back to front ability for a user to look at a summary balance as it's appearing on a return and to drill that right back down, should they need to the individual events that constituted that balance.
Okay, that's very interesting. So we had one more question from Lachana on YouTube, where don't know if it's something that you would be open to discuss now, or if we would come back after. But she is asking if I have to compare COREP versus ICAAP or ICAARA. We can say that ICAP and ICARA is an extension of COREP. Can we say that those two reportings are an extension of COREP?
I'll be honest, that's not an area that I've kind of looked at in detail, but I'd be more than happy to go away and do a bit of research in that respect and provide a kind of a fuller answer at some point in the future, if that's okay.
No problems, no problem. So Lechana will make sure to come back to you just after with a little bit more context on that. Those are specific questions. So, but on that, I will just thank everybody for attending the Meet the Expert session. I apologize for the few glitches that we had. This is a problem of life. Steve, a big thank you for all your insight. Maybe do you have any conclusion or any thought that you want to share before we finish it?
I think the kind of the key takeaway, and it's what we started out with, is that for most financial institutions, the greatest challenge in developing a COREP and a FINREP reporting infrastructure is understanding how to integrate a broad range of data sets into a single coherent data set in a central repository. That data set must include fully reconciled transaction level risk and finance data, so it can deliver the fully reconciled COREP and FINREP reports. That single data set, though, also has to be at the right level of data quality, be capable of providing a full audit trail, and also be able to interrogate and analyze easily. And obviously, we believe from a Legerity perspective that FastPost is the kind of application that can meet all of those requirements.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Steve. And just for all the people who are interested, we have actually a white paper coming on this subject that's going to be published very soon. So don't hesitate to get in touch on our website at info@legerityfinancials.com. And we will make sure that we'll send you all the information across, as well as answering any remaining question that you may have. So just now to finish, a quick word about Legerity FastPost. FastPost is really the next generation accounting rules platform. It's designed and developed for large volume of complicated data and processes. Being a cloud native, ultra high speed performance, we really built with the latest open source technology in order for people to build those accounting rules, those granular views that are required to do FINREP and COREP reportings. And so if you feel like there is any topics around that you would like to address in your organization, we invite you to contact our expert, people like Steve Jones. Myself will be very happy to discuss your own challenges. You can ask it at info@legerityfinancials, or you can also follow us on LinkedIn. And so you will have all the latest news, latest white papers, latest webinars available, and we will be always happy to interact with you on those topics. On that note, I just want to thank you again, Steve, and thank everybody who attended, and wish everybody a great rest of the week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
FastPost is the next generation accounting rules platform. Cloud native, ultra high performance, developed using the latest open source technologies for large volumes of complicated data and processes. Finance departments are under pressure. Legacy systems are creaking, inefficient, and error-prone. Forward-looking CFOs are driving change. Finance today is more than just accounting. Multiple stakeholders, clients, regulatory challenges, and the new digital world need a single version of the truth. Granular, accounting-validated data on demand. FastPost is modular, fully integrated with open interfaces and APIs, and the ability for user-defined business rules. Setting the standard for the next generation of accounting rules and subledger technology. We shorten processing time from days or hours to minutes. Offered both as a software and platform as a service, providing flexible and rapid deployment options to match your business needs. FastPost. Finance with confidence. Legerity. It's our business to take care of yours.